you're ready.
Testing.
Testing 1 2.
Yeah, we're on.
Good afternoon, good evening. Yes, there we go. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Once again, thank you. Tonight's board meeting of November 1st, we are going to jump right in. We are not honoring students tonight, but we are always here in honor of students. And so I do want to jump in tonight with we're going to have a presentation tonight. It's been a vision of mine, and I believe something that we've talked about as a goal and something we'd like to do as a district in terms of our long-term planning, and that is to bring to the good community of Sachem the potential for an education foundation. Several districts around us, including, I'll just talk about East Islip for a minute, have education foundations. They're different than other organizations. They are not part of the school district, but they support the school district. They give the community an opportunity beyond PTA or any other opportunity to give back, so to speak, to a school district that they care so much for and have fond memories for. And I know East Islip does a great job with this. They honor folks each year in their community, have a fundraiser. They raise a great many funds for their schools. And the teachers write grants each year to that education foundation. It's for opportunities outside the regular classroom, outside the regular curriculum, but real innovative opportunities for teachers, staff, students to work together for the betterment of our school community. And I started having this conversation with Mrs. Trombetta a while ago, and all of our folks here really over a year ago, 2 years ago, and finally started to get some movement on it. Patty said, why don't we reach out to someone that's going to be a real natural at this, and that is Mr. Chris Vaccaro, who's in our audience tonight. And Chris, we immediately tapped you and, of course, jumped in with both feet to start to talk to us about some of the planning around, again, this entity, which will be a not-for-profit outside of the auspices of the school district, but we will certainly play an important role in it if and when this starts to move forward. We hope it does sooner rather than later. So, Chris, I'm going to ask you to come up to the mic. Thank you so much. Introduce yourself a bit, and then we can jump right in with the presentation. I know you don't need much of an introduction with this group here. Thank you.
No, it's on. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Pelletieri and the cabinet, Mr. Trombetta, of course. Thanks to Mr. Scavo and the Board of Education. I hate not saying everybody's name. I know everybody. I appreciate everyone, what you guys do for our community. Was not expecting a call from Mrs. Trombetta to talk about this and then have a deeper conversation with Dr. Pelletieri, but it really doesn't take much for me to get excited about doing something that benefits Sachem, benefits kids, benefits the idea of putting us on a level playing field with other school districts and communities when it comes to curriculum and defining opportunities for innovation and growth, and all through engagement with the community and fundraising within the community outside of the scope of your general budget and the general way of spending money that you do every day here as it is. There's never enough money, even though we're in a great spot financially, which is really nice to say from a school district perspective. It's not always good to, have those conversations, but Sachem is in a great spot, but we want to get better. We want to get bigger. We want to get stronger. We want to keep benefiting students in a way that is fun and enlightening and engaging, and again, gets community involved. So the you can just click on yours if you want. I'm totally cool with that. I don't know. This isn't. Oh yeah, you guys click whatever. It's not working. Which we're getting into the meat and potatoes of our mission and our vision, which is really to create an educational foundation that builds on our scope of curriculum and gets the community involved for giving programming to children. To do that, it's about raising funds, and it's getting the community involved with different fundraisers, primarily a gala that we work towards that generates the most significant amount of revenue for this through the auspices of a 501c3. Yes, outside the walls of the school district, but very much involving our Board of Education and our administration to be involved with this, to help be a part of the board of directors that we build towards this, to obviously push teachers and administrators to submit grant applications and build on this togetherness that we're supposed to have here. It's not one or two people making a decision. It'll be a board of people who care about Sachem, who care about kids, who care about growing this thing together. And I've seen a lot of the posting of the word community with unity capitalized, obviously, especially in the last couple of weeks. And sometimes that just happens where we start to see that word when we're thinking about it. But the idea of unity, and this being about Sachem as a whole, not one or two elementary schools, not just elementary, not just East or North, just our entire district together, focused on coming together, raising funds together, and using grants that will hopefully touch many buildings and programming for many students. That excites me. And I think there's a way to do this that, again, puts us on a playing field with some of the best school districts out there that do this. And we've had some conversations with Rockville Center, with East Islip already from the fact-finding perspective. And yes, it's a challenge, but many of you know me personally, and many of you know nonprofit work that I do from both a regional perspective and a national perspective. And so I have the DNA to help do this, but more importantly, live here, grew up here, kids go here, I'll die here, as I say often. And this place means more to me than anything else. And so let's just, keep pouring on that spirit. And if it's about kids and it's about programming, again, that's an exciting endeavor for me to work toward. We've met just a couple of times. So if we're talking about timeline, very much still fact finding, gathering, building a group of people that can go and actually, do this together. I'm just one voice. This has to be something where there could be 20 to 45 people involved. Just in my conversations with Rockville Center this week alone, their board of directors is over 20 people. And that's great because more people, more ideas. Of course, more people, more headaches and such as well. But I think when you do this the right way, everyone's going to be on the same page, working toward the same goal, which is exciting. We hope to have sort of a kickoff meeting, and this is just a formal, talk to this incredible group about where we're headed, but we hope to have a kickoff meeting sometime, maybe November, December, with community stakeholders and people who would be interested in being on our board for the nonprofit. We have to establish bylaws. We have to do the paperwork to submit for being a formal 501c3. We have to form a bank account. We have to make sure we have lawyers involved and accountants involved from a numbers and a finance perspective. All that has to be taken care of. More so, once we get through some of those key, very preliminary elements, but really those are the building blocks for where we're headed. Building a website, building the social pages, making sure we have criteria for what that grant process is like, and then promoting it and getting it in the hands of administrators in the buildings and teachers to make sure they know how to submit. And that process of how we choose those grants will be very much a part of, this board's task of figuring out what the eventual grant money would go toward. To get that grant money, of course, we have to build that pool of money. We have to fundraise. We have to have this gala. So when I talked to Dr. Pelletieri, he said, why don't we shoot for spring of 25, which is great. Because if it was like, spring of 24, of course, I would say yes, and I'll dive head first. But the extra time is great to have to build towards something special, meaningful in our inaugural gala for May of 2025, which we hope to do in the community, by the way. There's a couple of catering hall facilities right here. I can't see doing this outside of our community. That wouldn't make sense to me. So we'll talk to obviously the ones that you would imagine we would talk to, and we'll build toward that. And I've been alluding to just a board of directors, plus there's an executive board, 20 plus. Rockville Center said, their bylaws could have as much as 45 people involved. If we need that, sure. I don't think we do, but we really need to make sure we have people that serve on a grant committee and people that serve on a gala committee at the very least. And yes, you could serve on both. I mean, we don't need to get into too much semantics now, but we want people who are passionate about Sachem. They went here, they live here, their kids go here, they own or operate a business here. And they can also, according to some of the other nonprofits in the sector that I spoke to, they could be teachers here. They just can't serve on the grant committee. So they could help steer this in the direction of, well, this is, how they would view it from an educational perspective. They just would not, have that conflict of interest to say, which grants go where, which makes total sense. We would obviously want Board of Education liaison. Usually it's the president of the board, according to the other organizations that I've spoken to. We would have a district liaison as well from Dr. Pelletieri's cabinet. It's been whomever is the best selection decision maker, really related to also curriculum, but there's no rhyme or reason to, as long as it's somebody that is there and vocal and present, we're excited for all the involvement and really just the inclusivity of all those sectors of leaders in the community to come together. It's not, again, just some rogue organization. It needs to be tethered to people who care in relation to education. So I do believe that this continues to separate us and, underscores our overall district mission of just being without equal. Our San Zigal motto means something to me, and this education foundation could continue to put us in a really great path. So I'll pause there. Obviously, if there's questions or further commentary, I'm happy to ask. We're very early in this. This is only like a month into just ideation at this point. So
Questions from the board? Matthew? No? Chris, we're very excited about this. Says your name?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for coming and, of course, spearheading this. This is a very exciting initiative. I just had a couple of questions. Do you have a plan? Would you be talking to also outreaching to alumni who no longer live within the boundaries of the district? Because
there are some people that have. Well, yes, and there's alumni in all 50 states and several countries and continents. People that have reached out and expressed interest, we're not going to turn them away if they don't live here. There's some very specific people that have already said, hey, I want to be involved. Hey, I want to donate. So we're not going to turn away the involvement or the money. But yeah, if they can be involved, we'll Zoom them in for meetings. I'm sure they would come here to our bigger events. I'm sure a large percentage of it are people that are very close by or, live here in the community itself. So,
and when you spoke to the other entities like this, was the board of directors composed of an at-large kind of system, or it was like a ward system? We had people representing all different areas of the district.
It's at large, but there seemed to be balance. Obviously, diversity, men, women, both in age as well. Some older folks, younger folks. They did allude to this aging out of a board. That there's a lot of these existing boards are older folks. So having that balance of younger and older is a smart way to balance out. Different ideas, different people at different stages of their lives think differently. Parents, alumni. I also think different job disciplines are going to be very important here. We want accountants, we want lawyers, we want doctors, we want teachers, we want people that are in the creative space. Everybody thinks differently. So I'd like to have involvement from different folks like that. But at large, I think we have to do it in a way that obviously is inclusive, but also if people want to reach out and get involved, they'll be able to reach out to me and we can facilitate a way to do that. Even if you're not on the board of directors and you want to be involved peripherally, we'll figure out a way to do that from a committee perspective as well.
And then the only other comment I had, you mentioned a 1-year term. I mean, that seems a little short for continuity purposes.
Yeah, I think that's just what the other organizations are doing. I think they just roll them over. It doesn't mean they're out completely. They've just done revote every year and stay on.
The learning curve would be tremendous.
No, I think that people will probably just stay. It gives those people the choice if they want to bow out after a certain amount of time they can. It doesn't have to be 2, 3, 5 years. But honestly, all that is up for discussion because it's just what I gathered in this first month. I don't even know if I have an opinion about that yet. So
okay, that's all. I just excited about the initiative.
Thanks.
Any other questions, Sabrina?
I don't have a question. This was when I first got elected onto the board. When I met with Dr. Pelletieri, this was the first thing he said he wanted to see. So I want to say thank you for stepping on that we could kind of bring this to fruition and bring it to Sachem, and excited to hear everything that comes along. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll do updates whenever Dr. Pelletieri wants me to, just so the community can hear and stay informed, whether it's quarterly or whenever. We'll get me one of those meetings where we honor 100 kids. So there's 2,000 people in the audience. But yeah, more information will come to you, as we develop it.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I'll just jump in and conclude. So many people have come to us, come to me, come to Chris, said, how can I help? How can I give back? How can I do more for this great school district that did so much for me? And this is a perfect opportunity to bring everyone together under one area, one name, right? Sachem Education Foundation. And again, fundraise for our kids so that these grants go to our teachers who write them, our administrators who write them, and they bring in someone who's writes operas and works with our music kids, or someone that builds ukuleles and works with our kids. Just amazing authors. Amazing opportunities to bring in people to actually work with our kids, but also materials, books, curriculum materials, just flexible seating. There's just so many things out there that can innovate and are beyond our grasp because we're so focused on the classroom and what we need to do in terms of our budget. And there's just so many things on our wish list that now we could really reach, I think. And again, Chris will be a steward of this, but we will have 20 to 30 people on a committee working on this. It's like a board of education. We may need 2 liaisons from this board. There's 9 people, so we'll have to consider that as well. But at some point, it's its own entity. It's a not-for-profit. It's not under our duress or thumb or anything. So it's going to be able to flourish as well and work alongside this board. And we'll have a member of our cabinet on it as well. So really, like you said, sans egal. I think there's so much that we can do for this. There's so many people out there that want to give back. So I'm really excited for it. Chris, thank you so much. Patty, thank you so much.
Actually, Meredith, you had a question?
I just wanted to say thank you because, first of all, anybody who doesn't know Chris, which I don't know if a person exists that doesn't know Chris Vaccaro, but everything he touches turns to gold. He just is amazing for our community. Everything he writes for our community, the way he gets involved with all of our children, I think it's amazing. And I think that he is absolutely the perfect person for this. I appreciate you wearing yet another hat in Sachem. And we've had conversations. I didn't grow up here, but every conversation always comes back to Sachem in some way. And so while our PTAs are amazing within the schools that they're within, they do tons of stuff for our children. I think this will enhance it that much further because now our alumni who do live everywhere else can actually still get involved. I know that we have tons of alumni who are constantly, even if we do like a football alumni thing, we have people that come in from other states just to hang out for the evening. So I think this is going to be great and I'm really super excited and, I'll help in any way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Stephanie?
Dr. Pelletieri mentioned some of the things like, flexible seating. What just to tell all of us, including me, who's not familiar with an educational foundation, what are you guys going to do? Like, what would some of the goals be to bring into Sachem?
Oh, from a what the grants would,
Right.
yeah.
What would you be working towards, like, say, your first or second, third?
It's really going to be based on the applications that are submitted from the educators. So I couldn't say there could be something where they want to get a specific author. There could be a piece of technology that we can invest in. There could be, I honestly, it's so broad. I don't even want to say 1 or 2 things.
So I was just going to jump in. So when I was on the executive board for SEPTA and we fundraised, teachers, our special education teachers would write requests for money for their classroom to buy supplies or a program or something like that. Being involved in the Catholic school system for a long time, a lot of Catholic schools raised money like this for specific educational, then for specific enhancements to sports or, Chaminade building, stadiums or whatever. So I think as you discuss it, and this would be up to the committee, it would be more along the lines education, and it would be teacher directed. Teachers writing for grants to bring something like arts and humanities into their classroom or specific technology or something like that. That's what I think mostly an educational foundation, how they're set up or are used for.
Yeah, the foundation itself would not have necessarily a vision for let's push this or push that. They might say, hey, maybe we should have a focus on STEAM activities or STEM engineering this year, math and the arts. And so the grants would be encouraged to be written that way, but it would come from the mind really of the teachers, the administrators who write the grants and want to use those things in their classrooms.
Stephanie, do you have any other questions before?
I think that answers it. I just was, I didn't know if it was from the community side and the teacher side. So the teacher side, like what would be something like really cool that like East Islip or Rockville Center got?
So
Like, do you off
Matthew,
the top of
you
your head?
going to answer that?
So I was able to write for 3 different grants and was awarded them. Thank you. But so one of them was like a complete set of books for my program, for the special ed program. Then another one was to get what were those called? iPads. I got 3 iPads for my classroom. I wrote a grant for that and I got it. And then the third one was a computer program. But it was a while ago. But Those are the kind of things.
It could alleviate
assume.
stuff on our side then, right?
We don't want to abdicate responsibility for providing our kids with the resources they need to be educated. However, when he got iPads, Matthew, I'm sure it was when they were just starting to
Right,
come
they
out,
were
right? And they were
expensive.
real.
It was like Spaceland. It was like, super technology. That was like the thing.
Yeah.
Vinny?
Chromebooks.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So, Chris, thank you very much. I think this is fantastic. And it kind of takes me back to we started the Tamarack Fathers Club a couple of years back at Tamarack and talk about iPads. We created a 501c3. We sat with Mr. Sadens at the time, the principal, and said, what is it that you need? There were a couple of things on his list. One was the original digital sign out in front of Tamarack. We fundraised and we bought that. The second thing on his list, in talking to him and his staff, was iPads. We actually raised enough money to bring in 50 iPads with 2 charging carts that got moved around from class to class. We actually met with Mr. Renda, okay, and we kind of started down a path of bringing technology to Sachem, which was
Right.
really the precursor to all the one-to-one devices that Dr. Pelletieri drove when he got here. So fantastic, and looking forward to seeing where this thing can go.
Thanks. Yeah, and in all the research just over the last few weeks, it's hardware. It's funding a robotics program for a school that had nothing like it. It's bringing in guest speakers. It could be another piece of software related to curriculum for science, for DNA with the genetics course that we want to bring back. Like, it's literally endless if we do this the right way. And we won't dictate a theme unless that's asked to do, like, STEM or something with science. So, that's the way to do it. But yeah, this is exciting.
We have robotics at the secondary level, middle school, high school.
Right.
We could buy kits for all
Good.
10 elementary schools that are facilitated through maybe our librarians in a digital space or something like that, where we wouldn't necessarily be able to buy in 1 year 10 robotics kits for our schools, but now or maybe we buy 20, so each school has 2. Those are the opportunities that you look for.
Do you mind if I just interject 1 sec? Chris, my fanfare around an educational foundation. Sable actually has a pretty robust educational foundation that
Oh,
they've had
good.
for
Okay.
years. Being on SEPTA all the years, I had the pleasure of working with that foundation and just the way that they operated, their protocols, just all the wonderful things that they did. So if you guys need anything around that,
I'd love
too,
to talk to them. Yeah.
I know they would be very happy to, also support the new budding Sachem Ed Foundation too.
Okay, that's great.
Chris, your next steps, the board gives a blessing. Let's do this. Everybody's excited about it here. Obviously, your passion and love for Sachem doesn't go unnoticed. You love this place, and you're definitely a perfect fit for somebody getting this up and running. Your network as well is tremendous. So, what are your next steps? Like, what's the next step? We give you a blessing.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
do it.
tapping that network for people that will be involved with this board, and people that could fill those balancing acts of having, an attorney involved, a financial person involved, and just come together with a critical mass of people. It's got to be a dozen or more folks that are expressing interest in being involved and hashing out what some of those initial criteria are. While also getting somebody who could help fill out the paperwork for the 501c3 and eventually form that bank account. Having a treasurer and having an executive board of a handful of high-level stakeholders are all on the immediate to-do list. And then having a meeting sometime, hopefully in November, December, the latest, of those people who really are expressing high level of interest to come together and hash out what the more granular calendar looks like between now and I'd say the end of this school year. So then we can report back on, but actually probably the next time we talk, we should have a grant criteria, probably a board of a skeleton board, at least, if not, a fully fledged list of people who want to be involved. And then, having all the stuff together for the paperwork that we would submit to the state. So,
Chris, is there anything that we can do to get the word out that this is going to happen and to help you formulate some of that, steps that have to be taken?
yeah, I'd be open to the outward communication. I'd put that with Dr. Pelletieri if you want to do that from the district perspective, or if you want to use some of my channels to say, hey, this is happening and we're looking for interest. I'm open for whatever the right path of communication is. I don't want to, again, go rogue and just start posting stuff on social or my Sachem sites that I have. So,
And as far as advisement, are we able to use our own legal counsel to advise on formulation of 501c3?
To protect us to a
Yeah.
certain extent, we'll make sure that we are protected. Chris will be there. But as
I'm
far
not
as
saying
as-
have Chris do it. I'm saying
Yeah.
is advisement as to the process and paperwork that's required.
I seem to remember we've done some of that before in other districts. We represent East Islip, and then we represent Jericho that has a big educational foundation. I know we've done some of that, and I'll find out.
So any way we could be assistance.
As long as there's no cost to the education foundation,
Yeah,
it goes
yeah,
to the
yeah.
district. Yeah.
Yeah, and everything everyone does with the foundation is going to be donation of time, money,
Yeah.
effort, services. So really appreciate that. And we have to be really cognizant of making sure we cover the entire town, right? All 15
that's
schools.
The most important part to me
Yeah.
is just, sometimes even when we seem together, there's always this divide, and I dislike that. I want everyone to feel like this is one organization for one district with no sides, and it's just all kids. So that's the first and foremost part of my agenda, really.
We appreciate you coming out, Chris, and stepping up into this position. It's a lot of heavy, load to carry, but we have faith that that you're going to be able to, get it up and going, and any support you need from us.
Yeah.
We're always here.
Don't be nervous. We're going to share that support, right? We're not going to put it all on
There's
you.
no
Chris.
nervousness when it comes to doing good. Also, your calendars, December 16th is the Sachem Athletic Hall of Fame induction. So put that down, 10 a.m. It's at Sachem North. That's the next big alumni-specific, sports-specific event. So, and I'll keep you updated through Mrs. Trombetta and Dr. Pelletieri. And I appreciate the time to talk tonight. Thanks for all the great work that you do. And Sanzi Gal.
Chris, thank you so
Thank
much. Thank you.
And I am going to leave. I'm not going to stay for the rest of the meeting. I have my doctoral classes are on Wednesday night, so I have to get back to my Zoom at LSU. But I apologize if I'm just scurrying out of here. It's not that I don't want to stay. So that's it. Thank
Chris,
you.
Understood. Thank you. One last piece I want to mention that next Tuesday, November 7th, is our Superintendent's Conference Day. We have a great many professional development activities and opportunities for our school community. Remember, folks, your little ones are home with you on that day, but our teachers will be here taking courses in things such as 3D printing in the classroom, education by design, sustainable health and fitness lifestyle, translation tools for ENL students, engaging students in Nearpod, supporting ELs in the general ed classroom, integrating communication skills, project-based learning, Python with drones. I may go find that drone teacher we had here again. Technology for teaching assistants. We have Mrs. Hines. This really comes out of your office on TAs, aides, teachers, counselors, social. Everybody's got something, a place to go and something to do on Superintendent's Conference Day. We look forward to that all the time. With NWEA, art, our counselors, as I mentioned, health and phys ed, differentiated instruction in special education setting, verbal de-escalation training as well, CPI training. A great many things are happening on that day, Tuesday. So thank you, Mrs. Hines, in advance, and our administrators for setting it up. And many of our teachers are providing the professional development themselves, which is really the best type of PD when you get your own people that are turnkeying their own personal knowledge. So thank you very much. Just wanted to put in a plug for that as well.
Rich, thank you so much for that superintendent's update, that report. Updates from student board members. Okay, anybody? Dylan?
I only got a couple things this time. So first and foremost, we have our football team. We have a playoff game on Friday against Wall Whitman. We've been selling, like student government, we've been selling white shirts for the game because that's the theme for us. So it's $5 for each of those, which is a bargain today, I got to say. And people have been saying that as well. And also with the football game, this is going to get into what I'm saying next. We're going to have a box, hopefully multiple boxes. Oops, sorry about that. Hopefully multiple boxes for Dirty Dozen. And there's no admission fee, but kind of goes without saying, like, we'd hope that you bring something to the game when you walk in. We're going to be right there at the table. So for Dirty Dozen, we're honestly lacking pretty bad right now. Like it's still relatively early, but we're not where we want to be right now. You know, we have boxes in a lot of classrooms. You have the option to sign up for that. And we're saying it on the announcements every day. We're trying to post it on social media as much as we can. We're outside a handy pantry most days. And I really can't stress this enough. I really think this is such an important thing. I think in today's day and age, the importance of just sitting down with family and having a feast like this, it gets so lost in everything. And I think everyone deserves it. And I mean, these are people you're with all the time, and you might not even know that they're going through something financially. So I just think it's a really important thing, and I'm hoping for any help we can get with this.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, to piggyback that, it's just we haven't really been meeting our quota when it comes to the amount of food boxes we need to feed our Sachem community. So we're probably around 20 filled boxes, and we need at least 300 just to feed our community's Sachem family. So anything that can help. I know we both just put boxes outside here that if people want to come donate, you can always contact East and you can bring the boxes there too.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we have the boxes again next. We have 2 more November meetings before Thanksgiving, and we have the box here tonight that I know I saw some board members walking.
Yeah, I
in.
really
One more
appreciate all
one
those
more meeting
donations
before
tonight.
Thanksgiving. Oh, it's November. That's right. I apologize. One more meeting. Okay.
Alex?
Chris, are we allowed to use ConnectEd for something like this where we could shoot it out and say, hey, send your kid to school. There's boxes at school. Come to the football
Right.
game. There's boxes set up there. Is that something that,
We'll figure out a way, whether it's through, we'll ask PTA, or we'll figure out a way to get it out to
or
everybody.
maybe just email it to everybody if you don't want to call? Just,
Yep.
if they're lacking, there's got to be a way that we can promote it better.
Some advice for you guys. I know that I work very closely with the outreach officer at Suffolk County Police Department, and they're tremendous at gathering food and giving it to the community. And in fact, that they've literally box trucks. What I would suggest, maybe even reach out to who's ever in charge of outreach in the fifth precinct, who does Ron Congress at the fourth, and see who the outreach person is there as well, and see if they could assist with, meet you guys meeting your quota. They're a tremendous resource, and I see what they do in Western Suffolk. I'm sure they do the same job out here in Eastern Suffolk. Anything we could do to help you guys make your quota. We'll certainly look to put something maybe online about, bring a canned good to the playoff game. Certainly, I think will be easier at North because it's home, right? East is at Wood Melville, so William Floyd. Yeah, so it might be a little bit harder there, but certainly I think we could do to help you guys meet your quota. We're here to help.
Really appreciate that, guys.
Also, if you guys use Sachem Moms for good instead of evil, there are over 10,000 people on there. I posted a post there for you today, and what everybody kept saying was, where are they picking up food? Where are they picking up food? So we have to find a way for you guys to get out there, maybe not always just to the kids, but to the parents. As much as our kids are wonderful, they don't always tell us everything that's going on. So find ways to get out to the parents. Sachem Moms is a huge resource. I don't know if your mom's on it. I know your mom is on it. I know that I will post anything for you. And I posted North's flyer only because I had it. So if you give me East's flyer, I'll post that as well. And just like I said to them, there's 10,000 of them. If they each donated $1 to each of you, you'd raise $20,000, 10,000 each.
Comments or updates? No? Okay.
I did forget one thing. We're getting into play season. Our plays are starting this weekend. I will be seeing Chorus Line and then Peter Pan. Yes. Wow. You guys don't give me a second here. Thank you. Like my wife here. Thank you very much. I am done.
Okay, next item is approval of minutes. Item D, an approval of minutes for October 25th meeting. Stephanie, second. Meredith, questions or discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Visitors? Randy, any visitors tonight? No. First session? No. Item 3 is business items. We have a consent agenda A through C. Any motion, please? Sabrina, second. Mike Cernia, questions or discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 4, we have consent agenda A through L, which is personnel for teachers. Any motion, please? Okay, Matthew, second. Laura, questions or discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Brings us to page 7. With consent agenda A through H, okay, for personnel. Any motion, please? Okay, Meredith, second by Mike Cernia. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
Mr.
Item C-
Scavo?
Yep.
Can we just take one moment to recognize 2 of our custodians who are going to be retiring in the upcoming month or 2? We have Jimmy Drew, who has just over 36 years as a custodian in our district, and Dan Lois, who has just shy of 40 years. So if you combine that, that's about 75 plus years of the Sachem community, helping out our schools, helping our students, our family, community events such as the Dirty Dozen kind of activities for coming together for the good of everybody. We want to congratulate them on their upcoming retirement and thank them for everything they've done for our Sachem family.
Ms. Esterny?
I'm just going to mention too, Dan Lois has been a friend of mine since we met in high school in Sachem in 1978. For those who don't know, his brother Michael was a teacher here, and his sister-in-law Paula Rittard worked for almost close to 40 years herself. So that's a real Sachem family, and the district really owes them a nice debt for their service over all those years.
Thank you, man. Item 6 is contracts. We have a consent agenda A through C. Any motion, please? Mike Cerny, second. Laura Slattery. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 7 is donations from the UL Solutions Military Business Resource Group. Any motion, please? Okay, Vinny, second by Sabrina. Questions or discussions? Ms. Cerny?
Just again, I'd like to thank Erin, of course, for honchoing this with me, and Jack in the back there, and of course, Dr. Pelletieri for letting us donate those books.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. We have a motion and a second, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Chris, could we generate a letter from the district to UL and send them a thank you for those books? Yes, appreciate it. Thank you. Item 8, Committee on Special Education. We have a consent agenda A and B. Any motion, please? Matthew Bauman, second. Okay, Sabrina Pikowitz. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 9 brings old business. Chris, no old business on the agenda? Okay. 10 board discussion items. We have a discussion and request to change policy on student transcripts and as it reflects Regents grades. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just introduce it and then we'll open it up to the board.
Just before we go to that, I'm sorry. Just going back to number 6, letter B. That came from the audit committee. When we have these discussions, isn't that supposed to come from us? Or isn't it like, was that a problem that all of a sudden came up? We didn't, the first we heard about it was in the packet and it was on Friday, but we haven't, I have, like when the auditor was here. I just think that like when we run committees, they should be at the direction of the board, right?
The audit committee
hold
is
on,
not
hold
a
on.
board committee.
Yeah, hold on. Just one
It's
person at a time.
different.
Alex, you have the floor now. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. My concern is that we didn't, when the auditors were here, or they didn't send us any type of message that said that this issue has arisen, we're gonna.
It's not an issue that arose, and it wasn't the auditor that presented the financial statements. This is part of the internal audit where they check our internal controls and policies and procedures. So what they recommended at the audit committee meeting was to look at the area related to attendance, as that employee attendance does impact our compensated absences, which is a calculation in our financial statements, but it's mostly related to seeing that we're properly reflecting, vacation, sick, personal time in, time out is accurate. When somebody's working overtime, if these records are accurate. So this actually is an area that was never looked at before. When the risk assessment report comes out and they have the dates of the last time they looked at different areas, we noticed that attendance was an area that was never looked at. So that was a discussion with the audit committee.
Yeah, so I guess my question is there a priority list from the internal auditors? Is there something that's next? Is that we would get a heads up?
That's part of that risk assessment report that we attached it to a Friday packet, and it was also on a board agenda. There's a chart in there that lists every area that as it relates to an internal control.
Okay.
And it's either high, low, medium, or high risk type of control area. And then it had also the dates of the last time the various areas were tested.
Okay.
So we looked through the whole cycle, and then we noticed that attendance actually was one area that had never been tested. So that's where that conversation led to.
I appreciate it. I didn't mean to go back.
Sure.
I just, if we're approving something, the first time that I saw it was in that Friday packet. So nothing was like a glaring issue before Friday.
No. And nothing is a glaring issue. That's
You're just making sure that it's not.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. Making sure the controls are working
I got it.
properly.
Thank you.
Laura?
Right. So with the audit committee, it's a little different because it's mandated by the state. And again, it even became more important after what happened in Roslyn School District. So the internal auditors aren't just going to take direction from the district or the board where we want them just to look. They're going to have a list of what's important for an internal auditor to review, and then go through the list with the audit committee and the business official to say, these are the areas where there can be a problem, so we need to review them. And again, that was an area that has not been reviewed. So that's why they suggested, that it was their recommendation to do that next.
Sure. So I guess my question was, when we do the updates, that should be part of the update. Like if you've been updated on that, the first that I heard of it was Friday. That's why I'm asking.
Right. So
like, if
I
we've
wasn't
sat in a
at that meeting.
Yeah.
So
That's all. Like
normally
3 days before, or well, I guess it's
Right.
5, but 3
So-
business days after. That's the first
right.
I heard.
I had missed that meeting. So normally when I do the audit committee update,
Yeah.
and actually I did go back just to double check. And if everybody remembers, that's when I went to say something and I had left my notes at home. So then I lost my train of
Yeah,
thought.
I'm not blaming you.
Oh, no,
specifically.
but I normally try, but if I now do not have my notes with me,
Yeah.
I literally cannot remember it once I'm
I
there.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry,
So,
Rob.
no, that's right. So just for clarification, that's just a recommendation. We're approving that they look into it, and they're just going to look at the processes. They're not going to be looking at, in other words, it's not going to be a witch hunt. We're not going to say, oh, this
No,
school
no.
did poorly than this school.
Not a
Yeah.
witch hunt at all.
Yeah.
They're
Just want to make
taking,
sure.
Sometimes it turns into a witch hunt. all of
and
a
I
sudden.
believe in
Sometimes a
the,
red flag comes up, and all of a
Well,
sudden
it-
we go down the left rabbit hole.
if any red flags are there, obviously they will investigate them further. But I believe the engagement letter spells out their selection size, like if it's going to be 50 transactions from each building, and yeah, they'll spread it across the entire district, and then if anything
And
comes
so
up, they'll investigate.
recommendations as to how we can improve the process.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions about that? All right. So it brings us to discussion items. Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you to present student transcripts on.
Thank you, Mr. Scavo. It was brought to my attention by a parent after a request that her child, who is really reaching this year, and I commend him for taking a higher level course that he typically might not take, but at the behest of his parents and a lot of research that says, let's really reach, right? Let's really strive while we're in high school to take the most challenging curriculum we can. And so this child is taking a Regents course that he knows he might not do well on. And so the request from the parent was, why can't we just put a P or an F on the transcript for the Regents? Instead, it has to say 38 or, some glaring number for a child who really reaches but struggles perhaps on a Regents. And so that was brought to my attention. I did mention it to the board that we could have that discussion here because I think it's certainly a policy worthy of the board reviewing and reflecting on. I will say that I spoke to my 15 colleagues in the surrounding districts around us, and none of the districts actually have that policy or do that. It doesn't mean that Sachem can't be a leader. We always are a leader in a lot of things that we do, but no one's doing it at this time. The concern might be that it would make our kids' transcripts be very different than other transcripts with other kids from other school districts. And obviously we want to be as competitive as possible with our students and that are applying for universities and whatnot. So a concern might lie there in terms of making our transcripts somewhat different to others. Also, people might use it to whether they change. I got a 78 on a transcript, but I don't like that it's that high. Even though I passed, I'd rather just have the P than the number. I think that could impact some kids. I'm not sure necessarily positively or negatively, but that would be a concern as well. And lastly, I think a final piece for this, and I'd recommend, is that we certainly hold off from making any decision, at least initially right now. The New York State Education Its Blue Ribbon Commission is coming out with its findings, and we've been told for a short period of time now that they're going to actually give us those findings and those recommendations for the future when it comes to regents. And so a concern I'd have is we start changing policies around regents and impact now, and the state makes some different changes from what it is that we're doing. It could impact our kids negatively. So in a nutshell, again, this idea was, should we put P's and F's only on our regents for those that want them? Parents would have to decide, and we'd have to go in and be pretty labor intensive to just make sure that the students that wanted a P or an F got a P or an F as opposed to a number. We'd have that to contend with. And there's some concerns around how that might impact our kids if it impacts them negatively in any way. None of the other districts around us do it. So for the time being, I think we'd probably be better off at least finding out what the state has to say around this in February, March, when they're supposed to release a lot of their information about the regents, and see how that might impact us going forward.
Yeah, I'm going to open questions to the board. Stephanie?
Would this impact like a kid who got a P or an F as opposed to someone who chose to get a numerical grade? That's going to impact their overall average, right? So it would look like the P or the F would go higher, or no?
We'd have to look at how universities, actually colleges, institutions of higher learning, look at that P or F and say, okay, this kid got an 81, this kid has a P. How are we weighting that? How
Like
are we
some
looking
offer
at that?
Some colleges offer this, but
They themselves,
yeah.
sure, but not the schools around
How
us.
that's my question is
Yeah.
you don't want it to be used as a tool to raise your average to
Mhm.
someone else who's,
Yep.
competing against you, especially in the higher level. But on the other side of it, you don't want it to someone who's working really hard, who gets a decent grade in the class. You don't want them decimating their transcript with like a 30. So I could see both arguments.
Can I
on
just
this.
say, I think there's two different things here. We had pass or fail for AP courses was a request,
Right.
and then to just have the ability to take a regent score off of the transcript. So
So
right,
it
that's
wouldn't be a
Pelletary?
pass or fail for the regents. It would be a
You
pass or
could-
fail for the
There were,
class.
There's
the
two
re-
requests. I
Yeah,
think,
there's
right?
essentially two requests. One, could I do, I'm talking mostly tonight about, not mostly, I'm talking tonight about the regents.
Right, okay.
There was a request as well around AP that I didn't bring to this
Yeah,
table yet.
okay,
Yeah. But without a doubt, there is a request to either just not have just have an F, for example, or give some people the right to have the P or the F, or just have a numerical grade if I pass, and then an F if I fail. Again, like almost a
The grade
menu
would still
of
be
things.
factored into the average.
It would
for the
have to
class,
be,
right?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
Because then it wouldn't.
That's
it wouldn't
correct.
Be fair to the other students.
That's correct.
Right.
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay, Meredith?
So one question is, the class itself would get at the end of the year a numerical. So you
Yep.
got an 87 in the class, but if you bomb the regents, that would just say, or you passed it by the skin of your teeth, it would say pass. So it wasn't like a kid who got a 90 all year, got a 65 on the regents. Now he sees a 90 and a 65. We just see his overall grade average for the year and a pass the regents.
That was essentially the request. Yes, that it's not going to impact the grade averages at all, or the overall average on the transcript, but the transcript itself would read P or F.
Okay. And then since education's not my thing and there's plenty of experts on this board, I'd like to lean on my colleagues on the board who are in education and just get your opinions. Do you think that this is, do you think that this is going to help? Because obviously any kid who's really out there and pushing themselves and doing well is not going to choose the pass or fail. This is more meant for a child who really may do great in this class but struggle on a test, our regents, or that kid who just can't get it together for the regents. So those kids who are pushing themselves for a better class but not necessarily the great regents, I would assume, would this be helpful to them? How do you guys feel?
Well, Matthew, actually going to go over to Matthew and we'll come back to Serena.
All right. I think there's so many different little variables to this. So if they got a 38, you said they got a 38. Could they not put it on at all as if they never took it? Like, why would they put a 38 on that? And that
The state automatic, when we build our transcript, every child that takes regents, they get obviously the course, and they would get the Regents grade on the transcript. And so we could, ultimately, the board could say, we're not going to put any grades.
Yeah,
on
why
there.
would we?
Well, but then you're going to put on only passing grades, not failing grades?
Well, I don't know. That's why I asked the question. I'm not sure. That's what I mean. There's so many little.
There are.
And would there be a point system? So let's say somebody got a 65. Yeah, they just passed the test. Just passed. And then another kid got a 99. If they both got a P, that would be so that would be even? Or would there be some sort of a point system?
No, they would have
Or would
their,
the one that got the 99,
he could
keep
have
the
it,
numeral?
he would have
numeric.
99 written on it.
So it would be
And the kid with the 65 would get a P.
yeah, I mean, I'm all for it as far as for special ed purposes, like, hey, Johnny, give it the old try, and then they get a 12, and I've seen single digit Regent scores, single digits. Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that on the transcript because they could still, wind up going to college, at Suffolk or whatever. So yeah, I'm still on the fence. I'm on the fence.
Sabrina?
Is this for students who are taking Regents level classes that are not what they would need to graduate, or we're talking about any Regents level class?
Yep. We would get to make that decision. If you were going to do it, I would say you would do it non-required
Right.
for graduation classes.
Right. I think that's an absolute given because if a child's just taking the class to take the class, I think that's a 100%. Let's give them P, F, or not even write it there. That's my opinion on that. I think the part that's hard for me to make this decision is when you look at a transcript, we've said it, the equity among what other districts are doing. So how are we going to make our kids be, if Sayville does it one way and Bayport does it another way, there really has to be something from the state or a BOCES program where all these districts come together and decide this is what we're going to put on our transcripts. Because if we say, let's not count it, but then another district does, how are we making our students who are applying to colleges do they look better or worse for doing that? Does a college look poorly that you put a P on there instead of a 72?
Mm-hmm.
So those are a lot of questions I have because obviously I want to do what benefits the child, but at the same time, we want to make sure that what the kids are presenting to the college in their transcript is something that's going to benefit and not hurt them. So that's why I'm so if it's not a course it's towards graduation, absolutely, kids just trying to take an extra class, I'm for that 100%. But the other piece I would like, again, more data of what other districts are doing, so that we're not doing something that's, in the long run hurting our students.
Stephanie?
To her point, because that was one part of my question, is if a student's taking a non-required Regents class to push themselves,
Yep.
right? If they fail, why would we give them an F anyway? Why wouldn't we just leave it off? Because that would be almost just as bad as putting the numerical, right? You don't want to, if we're doing this to help the student, the F shouldn't even be there, in my opinion. The other question would be, and I should have wrote it down because I think I lost it. Come back to me. But that was one of them. Why would we even have an F? Why would that even be an option?
Mike?
So I'm still under the presumption. I thought we said that the Regents were going to count as a portion of their grade. Did we say that? Okay.
Yes.
So let me
Currently it does.
let me give a hypothetical, and you tell me what the answer would be. So if a class was running that didn't have a midterm, decide they're going to have their Regents act as 20% of their grade. They have their 4 quarters and they'll have their Regents. And the kid gets a 90, a 90, a 90, and a 90 as a class grade, but then only gets a 40 on the Regents. Is his final grade, and he says, don't put this on my transcript, just give me an F. Is his final grade a 90 or is his final grade an 80?
No, you have to count the test. He took the test.
Okay, so the reflection of the final course grade is going to somehow factor into what the Regents grade was.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do we also know, can we legally not put these scores on their transcripts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New York State doesn't require it. They don't require you to add it in.
Okay.
Meredith?
So a couple questions. Could we reach out to some colleges and just ask them what that P or F might do? And just a couple of random, maybe some SUNYs, but also some private schools. And then going back to our do no harm or lack thereof policy, are all Regents grades, no matter what, across the board for every school in New York, they are put on everyone's transcripts?
No, I can't speak to that. I can speak to the 15 around us that all
Okay.
put every grade that they have, every test that they take.
Okay. Because while it is great to, kind of work around, the neighborhood, we got the surrounding neighborhoods, our kids, when they're going and applying at colleges, are applying to colleges where kids from all 50 states are applying to. And yes, when they go to a SUNY school, most of them are from from someplace in New York. But there are kids that apply from everywhere to every school. So in upstate New York, if they're doing this, in Kansas, if they're doing this, it's just as important as if they're doing it in our 15 surrounding areas. Long Island tends to do things a little differently in education to begin with than a lot of other areas. So we have to remember when our kids are competing to get into colleges, it's not just with other Long Island kids. It's, so this could be the norm in most of the country. And so when a college person looks at one of our kids' applications with a P or an F, they might not, and especially since New York's the only one that's doing the Regents to begin with.
To your
So this
point,
is-
yes, New York is the only one that's doing the Regents, and who knows in 2 months from now, 3
Right.
months from now, what our Regents are going to look like, what the impact will be, and what the ruling will be in terms of what should be on transcripts.
Because we might really be doing our own students a disservice. If a student does great for the year, like you just said, they get a 90 all year, bomb the Regents. And so their average still looks great at an 80, but you see that 65 and all of a sudden it might jump out at you because you see 80s, 65. The 65 might jump out at you. And so that might actually be harming our kids.
Alex?
I'm more than happy to wait till we get more information. My only concern is that I know that there's, a school district that's close that's been accused of inflating grades, and I'm concerned that we could possibly send kids away that we're saying, oh well, they're working really hard, and then we're gonna send them off to wherever, and then they're gonna say, oh, look what Sachem's doing. They're sending these kids with inflated grades to us. They said that they're doing okay. Why are we gonna take any other Sachem kids moving forward? Could this hurt future Sachem kids by not being honest to colleges and saying how our kids are really doing? I would be concerned that we would get that reputation with college admissions counselors. And listen, I'm the first one to say, I don't like the Regents. I don't like Roger Tillis. I don't like the governor. I don't like the state ed. Just make the list of people I don't like, right? But or we can make a list of people I do like, because
Alex,
that's the shorter list.
Tell us how you really feel.
No,
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that. But I also don't want to put Sachem in a position where we are put on some type of blacklist where we are sending kids that are not prepared, because we are now only sending positives. Like, I can make highlight films of my basketball players, and any highlight film that you've ever seen is only the good stuff. It's only the makes. It's only the block shots. It's only anything positive. But any good college coach always says, Coach, I saw so-and-so's highlight film. Can you send the full game film? Because they want to see the failure. They want to see the body language. They want to see the bad things and how that responds from that. So if you're getting 90, 90, 90, 90, and you got a 50 on the test, the 90 does stand out. That's full year coursework. I think that does speak volumes of the kid. I mean, not everybody's a great test taker, and not every test, like we know from the Regents, reflects really what's being learned throughout the year, or our teachers, because these tests are negative on our teachers, but now we're going to take them away from the kids because of APPR. So I would be concerned about that too.
Okay, Meredith?
Oh,
Dylan had a really
Did you
good
forget me?
Oh, sorry. Dylan had a really good point, and from a student's perspective, and I know they don't have input, but I think the student's perspective might be helpful. Sorry, Dylan, putting you on the spot. Go ahead.
I don't know. Like, I don't think I scored too bad on my Regents. I'm trying to be modest here. I'm a 90s kid, but I got all 80s, mid 80s on my Regents, and on my transcript, it's because I've seen it. It's just this big rectangle in the corner of it, and it's got all these Regent scores, and I just don't think they reflect who I am. So I don't think we should have them automatically on there. I wish there was a way to at least get them off. Like I know they're factored into my grade automatically because they're put in like for the final exam, but still, I just wish that it wasn't such a glaring thing, especially because it's like I'm applying to schools like out of state. Like I don't need them to see something that other states, like that state doesn't even have. You know what I mean?
Laura?
Okay, so I'm glad you got to speak first. So it worked out perfectly. So again, our teachers are the ones testing our kids, teaching our kids, and those are the grades that reflect who our kids are. If our kids do well in our classes, for our teachers, when they get to college, they're going to do well there. Our Regents, that is given by New York State, is done to make money off our students. It's not done to help our teachers teach our students. It's not done based on what our students learn during the year. It's not done based on what our teachers have any input or any feedback on. It is done strictly just to make money by giving the Regents to students. And it's only done in New York State. So I do not think our Regents are an accurate reflection of our students. I think you're going to do great in college. It doesn't matter you got 80s on Regents, because Regents honestly mean nothing. So when we put a 30 on a Regents, it doesn't even matter if we put it and it's glaring, because like you said, we're already counting it into your score. I know other districts don't do that. I know we've had those discussions. I know it's not a discussion here. So I'll stick with that. But I'm a parent of a kid who got in a single digit on a Regents. Doesn't mean my kid worked any less hard than Dylan or anybody else. He probably worked harder, but the Regents were not geared towards what he was learning towards the year. And he was not able to take it. And to see an 8 or a 5 on your kid when he has an 80 in a class is awful. And I think it's a terrible practice. I will always be that. I will not be popular, but I hate the Regents. They do not reflect accurately our students. We're competing with other kids going to out-of-state schools that don't have Regents, and it actually hurts our students. And by factoring in a 9 on a grade when you have a kid that struggled all year, to me, is child abuse. And that's just my opinion.
All right. Stephanie,
I unfortunately remembered, so now I have 3. Okay.
did you write them down?
Yes, I
Stephanie?
did,
Okay.
because I starred them because one was written and I just didn't see it. Okay, there's discussion that colleges out of state are disregarding our Regents scores. So why would we want to showcase them for colleges to see, to just throw away? Which in your case, you want them thrown away because your grades are so much better. And this isn't just about special ed children. This is about high achieving children who might have a bad test because that test is not being written by our teachers here. And, you know, they're not learning the random test that's given to them because they can't teach to that test because nobody knows what it's made of. I wanted to also know if the blue ribbon, when is that? So like if we wait, when are they
February
making that
20
decision?
February
So-
2025.
Okay, so I would be okay with waiting on this decision, just as long as it doesn't, well, no, it could hurt some kids in January, right? So we kind of need to make this
A lot
decision.
of kids' transcripts, quite honestly, the transcripts for both schools have gone out already. So this is a decision,
This is for
yeah,
next
that
year?
would
Okay.
be most likely
And,
for next year.
All right, hold on. 1, 2. How am I losing something? It's just coming back. I did, and I starred 2 of them. It's everywhere. Hold on a second. Oh, no, this wasn't on here. Like Laura had said, we don't have to use these grades. They're really a proficiency test to make sure that our kids can pass it, not that it should be used as a grade. And I know that's not the discussion right now, but if that's where we're headed, then we don't even need to factor these into the kids' grades, because again, we're giving them a test that's written by other people that aren't written by our own teachers. And we're not teaching to
That's
that
our
test.
own policy, though. That's our own practice. Yeah.
Totally get that. But if we're on this train, we should have the bigger discussion on what we're doing with Regents grades instead of piecemealing things, you know, and
That
and
discussion
parsing.
is set to take
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
with
So
our
I'm wondering
committee.
if this should all be in the same discussion.
Well, it'd be a long discussion.
We've done
I think
it.
this one just pertains to whether or not we want to put a P or an F.
Because would that
or
change
do
with
we
that
wanna-
discussion?
Or do we want to extend it and just not put any grade? It's really what this discussion
I
is.
definitely
mean,
wouldn't give an F. That to me is just as bad. You might as well big red F on the paper. Yeah.
Alex, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just, if if a child fails a Regents, does that still count towards the teacher's APPR?
APPR is a big
Yeah.
monster, right? So, yes, I mean,
As
a
a
child's
portion of the
grade,
APPR.
yeah, child's grade on certain regents in this district, yes, if they fail that regents, it would impact. There's only certain regions that we have, not all the regions are in there, but it could impact the teacher's grade, yes.
So my concern would be, I mean, we've been advocating to eliminate APPR. We've been advocating to eliminate Regents. So we're doing our part, although we're going through NISBA, which we don't need to, but
That's another whole discussion.
that's a whole other long discussion. They're on the list too. My concern would be like, if you tell me to go take a test that doesn't count, that may not count, I don't know what my level of effort would be. And now that is a grade that's going to negatively impact one of our teachers who don't have the option to say, well, little Johnny didn't take it seriously, and now that could destroy my career. I have a family, I have a house, I have kids. There's more factors. I'm not saying that this should land on our kids, but we didn't make that policy. We didn't create APPR. You know, we have to understand that I don't think it should be on there. I'm with you. You don't have to sell me. Like I don't think it should be part of the grade. I don't think it should be on there at all. But I didn't create APPR, and until we can eliminate it, how could you look our educators in the face and say, well, we're gonna just take it off. If they don't do well, we'll just take it off. That for the high achieving kids, it's never going to be an issue. But there's a middle of the road that just, that may not try as hard. I don't know what that percentage is, but that could be a factor. And I'd be concerned that would impact people's.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Heidi score.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. Yeah. Matthew, and we'll come back to Sabrina.
Does it affect the APPR score for special ed teachers?
Erin?
It does. We actually, in our APPR plan, have not just the current score for the year, but we actually, as Dr. Pelletieri was referencing, we have a 10-year look back that with the teachers union and the administrators union, because the principals are also evaluated under APPR, we do a cross comparison with a 10-year look back with their region scores with other specific districts, county.
That's crazy. First, that's insane.
What's insane?
It's
Tell me
insane
what's
that
insane.
That we're forcing these. So I'm back into the special ed. We're forcing the special ed kids to take these regions. Huh?
The state.
Okay. No, state, right. We're forcing, when I say we, I mean state. We're forcing the special ed kids to take these tests. So not only are we hurting the kids that way, but then we're going to hurt the teachers as well. No matter how many hours they spend teaching, their students, that there's that's crazy. That's insane. So we should absolutely try to get rid of that. And then the other thing with the electives, if the student is taking a class that's maybe higher than but they're really trying and they're doing their best, and if it's an elective, they don't need the Regents anyway, so why would they take it?
Oh, it's our policy that kids kids take the class, take the Regents.
A kid can take an AP class and not take the AP test.
That's correct.
So that's really the way we should go. That's what I think.
Drop the mic.
Yeah,
no, we're agreeing with you. Like mic drop. Yay.
So
Sabrina?
So if a child is taking the Regents course for graduation,
Yes.
they have to keep taking that Regents until they pass it anyway.
Yep.
So then we could just put it, there would never actually be an F for a child.
We
because-
could. You could not have the F pile. You could just.
No,
have
but they would have
nothing
to
there.
pass to graduate, correct?
Well-
Right, Joe, so I'm saying, so our kids we're really focusing on kids who are just taking this, because eventually every kid to get their diploma has to pass the Regents for that course, correct?
But it could take them 4 times. So like
Right,
the
but doesn't
first.
so every time they take it, it's on their
Yes.
report card?
Yes.
Yep. It'll
Yeah.
say
Oh,
2 or
no.
3
No,
times.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought the highest
Yeah.
score would.
And then
I thought
the,
just
No,
the highest
if
score.
it's
the highest
the
score.
same-
Hold on, too many people talking at
Okay.
once, guys. Chris, just the highest
Yeah,
score would
just
stay.
the highest score stays.
Right. So for kids that are taking it for graduation requirements, eventually it's not going to be a failing grade. So we're just saying, can we make that 65, that passing grade, just be a P instead of a number? That's the discussion we're having. There'll never be an F unless the child's taking it for, and as Matt said, like an elective. Correct?
We could do it that way for transparency's sake, to Alex's point for a second, for transparency's sake, as child took the test and did not meet the requirement for passing, you could have an F or just some recognition of that effort.
And Stephanie?
I wouldn't worry about inflation of grades in this specific area because the state actually recommends we don't use it in our grading. So for the final average. With that, the other question I have is if a child refuses now to take the Regents because they don't need it to graduate, is that an automatic 0?
I know that I'd have to go back. I don't know off the top of my head. I know we've had instances where a child hasn't taken a Regents, they were sick or something like that, and there's no makeup, as you know.
I didn't know that. So that's
well,
my
when
question.
you take the Regents, they're only given on a certain day at a certain time, and that's
Right.
it. You'd take it again then in August if you missed it in June or something along the lines
That's what
of
I
that.
assumed
Right.
happened. But if,
Right.
say, a child is right now taking an elective,
Yeah, I'd have to get you that
Regents
answer.
class. Okay.
I'll get you that answer.
And is there a large amount of kids that are not passing the Regents? Like overall, are we having a huge number of kids who are passing the class, not passing the Regents,
No.
or scoring really low
No.
compared to their grade?
No.
Because I think like a 10-point spread is
Mhm.
pretty significant.
Yep. Meredith just said something in terms of geometry, and that's true. Geometry is one that seems to be an outlier almost every year.
Can we get that data? Can we get the data of how many kids are passing, failing Regents, and then the spread of the ones that, is that too much of a job to ask? With what happened with him, because if he's getting a 96 and he's getting an 82, it's pretty significant distance.
Mhm. I mean, I'll have to speak to a couple of our e-school experts to see what we could come up with.
Can I just clarify? You're saying it's a significance between his class grade and his test grade. The problem is the teachers don't know what the Regents looks like until Regents comes out. So they could be learning this math problem and then the Regents comes out and it's completely different.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Because
That's
then
why
it's making
Regents are
him
stupid. That's
right, but it's making him look like his test could be either making it look like the test is bad, which is my opinion, or it could also look like the teacher made the class easy, and now someone could look at it and say, well, he's really an 82 student instead of a 94 student, right? If it's going to a college, you
Yeah.
could get two thoughts on that.
Yeah, so if you go through the process, the whole college admissions things, I'm going to be honest, I don't think a lot of emphasis is
I
put on
I
a
personally
student's
think,
Regents
yeah, I
grades.
agree.
They look at their overall grade point average. They
I
look at
agree.
the challenges they've taken. And certainly I'm going to speak, but I'm going to speak last. I know Mike, and I'm going to touch upon some of the things in my professional opinion, what I see in my school. But I'm going to come back to Mike and then Sabrina, and then we got to wrap this up.
Now, Rob, I just wanted to remind everybody that we did advocate with NISBA to have them decouple, was the term of art, decouple that testing from the APPR for the teachers for that exact reason, Matt. I don't know if anybody remembers. I don't know. I forget. Was that passed?
The resolution was passed for them to advocate
Right.
on behalf of the Board of Education, of course, the state. But once again, to Alex's point, it now has to go to the legislature. It now has
Right.
to go to the Senate.
But this board's
State
position is
Education
to
Department.
this board's position is to decouple that
Absolutely.
connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was an overwhelming. That passed by a lot. So it's the consensus of many school boards across the state. All right. Sabrina, and then we'll come back to you.
Well, just for tonight, for the sake, because I mean, we're going back on this discussion back and forth. Meanwhile, we have the blue ribbon. And I believe also our curriculum council, that's one of the discussions we're having, right, about GPA. So we will get input from students, parents, and all that. So I think maybe today the decision is really more about those kids that are taking it as an elective. Do we all agree that we shouldn't be counting it or give them that just a P for it instead of the actual grade because they have to take the Regents. If they're enrolled in the course, they have to take it. That's really the decision we have to, should make tonight, but I guess until we know what the blue ribbon, because all this, we could be going back and forth for hours and all of it's going to be thrown out the window when we find out what the state says and has changed. So I think really if we just focus on that one piece now, and then we could come back and have that discussion.
Yeah.
Obviously, you could put your input in, and then also the curriculum council, everybody who's there, and we could kind of put everything together once we hear from that committee.
I don't think any decision needs to be made tonight, to be honest with you. I think the recommendation is let's see what happens with the blue ribbon findings.
I think you needed that tonight, Dr. Pelletier,
I don't necessarily need it tonight.
Oh,
When we
okay.
first started, we were trying to hyperdrive this. And then hearing that the transcripts have gone out and that the committee, the Blue Ribbon Commission is going to give us their findings for February, I think that we're probably better off before we run out and do something that could potentially long-term perhaps harm our kids. Obviously, we want to be careful. So I'd rather we wait a little bit. I'm
Mike,
glad we're having the
come back.
discussion though.
Mike, and then Meredith. You mentioned. Okay. Meredith?
I just looked up my sons and he had to take the geometry twice and they're both grades are there and they're both.
I don't know that's the one I want out. Is that the one I got mailed out? Or are you just looking on?
I'm looking on our portal.
Yeah. The ones that we send out, I believe, have a different. I've had it.
Chris?
Under the assessments portion.
Sorry, it's quick.
Go ahead.
Okay. If we make this decision in February and somebody wants a new transcript, can we give it to them?
Sure.
Okay, that's all.
Chris, I know you said you reached out to 15. I think in the original package it 17 superintendents. What was their input on it? What was their their take on it? Did you get into any discussion as to the pros and the cons and what their concerns were?
This was we didn't have a detailed discussion. It was more I have a text chain with my guys and we bounce ideas, ladies and gentlemen from the different superintendencies, just questions about different things. And mine was, again, do any of you do anything different with transcripts in terms of passing, failing, secondary courses, anything like that? And the responses I got back were no, but it is something I can put on my ISLIP cluster agenda for deeper discussion and get some more
I would just
feedback
be
on.
curious as to what the opinions are the superintendents of all the school districts. And, maybe they see something that we don't see. Maybe there's a concern that they have. Look, I think some really, really valid points were brought up tonight. I think, certainly we don't ever want to harm a student. I think we're putting a lot of emphasis on, whether or not a kid gets into a school based upon how they did on a Regents exam. And I think administration, that look at, registration or acceptance for college is looking at a lot of other things just besides that little piece. Some of the look, Alex brought up some really good valid points is to, whether or not, we hurt our kids by putting a P or an F. If there's a kid, especially in New York State, I think regents are given in 7 different states. At least that's how it was written on the resolution that we submitted. That 7 different states actually require regents exams, or 6 different states require regents exams. If we have 2 kids that are applying for SUNY school in New York State, okay, and one has a 75 and the other one has a P, okay, does that now hurt that one kid that has the P within New York State? If a kid's applying to Ohio State University and they're not looking at regents exams, obviously would have no effect. But the kids, we sent a lot of our kids. In fact, we sent a lot of our top students to state universities in New York. And if a kid in admissions representative saying, well, I'm curious, this raises a red flag. There's a P on here, or an F on here, and this kid's got a report an 80. Does that put one of our kids at a disadvantage? I could tell you from a teacher's standpoint, there are a lot of kids that say, well, what's the lowest grade I can get to pass the year? Okay, and I had that question asked me actually last year, and I'd say, listen, I'm not even going to tell you what the lowest score you need to get to pass, because that means you're not going to make the effort that I want you to make. And I didn't tell that student what they needed, and that student ended up pulling an 85 on the final exam and doing very, very well. But had I said, listen, you don't even need the final exam to pass this year, the outcome would have been a lot worse. And that's my concern, is that you want to challenge kids, but you don't want it to be the end all. I think the other thing that we talked about is, if we're going to start taking grades off a transcript, then those grades should not count towards the teacher's final APPR score, the Heidi score. If we could revise that, our APPR application, to resubmit it to the state and say, look, if this is what we're going to do, we don't want it to hurt our own staff, because it is not a good reflection of our own staff. It's a terrible reflection of our staff. There's a lot of balls in the air that I think we would have to modify and change before we go ahead and make this decision, and making sure that we're not hurting our kids, but also we're not hurting our staff as well. But I think to Chris's point, why don't we wait for the results to come in from the Blue Ribbon Committee? At the same time, Chris, if you can get us more feedback from superintendents from across the, your cluster, see what they think the pros and cons of that would be, and we can go from there. We can make that decision probably by February. Is everybody okay with that? All right.
Can we have more data? Can we
Yeah,
have
that's
data on
the extra data. Yeah, and
for
Chris,
the
and
regions?
question was asked at kids that failed the regions. Last year, we excluded, I think it was like one kid at North and two kids at East. Was that correct? If I remember, it was minimal, right? So it's not like it's drastically
What
affecting
did
the
you
kids.
just say? Excluded from what?
In other words, if last year we took a position, a no harm position, where if a kid failed the regions to the level where it caused them to fail the course and not graduate, we didn't count it.
Okay.
And I think it was only maybe two kids at one high school, maybe one kid at the second high school. It was 4 total.
Do they need it for the graduation? Is it a
Yeah,
Regents
well,
they failed that?
they
like,
needed
how
it.
do
They
we
needed
get
it for the
them-
passing of the class. They needed that Regents score in order to determine whether or not they passed. Don't forget the Regents exam or that final exam counts as 15% of their total.
How do they
Well,
get
right? Is
a
it 10 or
diploma
15?
if they don't pass?
10% for the Regents exam, and then 5% for the midterm. So it's a total of 15% between the two exams.
Right.
Yeah. So those kids would have failed the course and would not have graduated. All right.
How many kids are passing the course and failing the Regents? That's my
I don't know.
question.
That's data we need. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's my worry. Is that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about. You know what I mean? If this is going to hurt a kid's graduation prospects, but not only that, if they're taking this class and they don't need it to graduate, that's an issue. The ones that need it to graduate, that's even
Yeah.
a bigger issue.
Yeah.
But you don't
So-
want it to hurt the kids that.
Can we just find out how hard it is to revise our APPR, like what that process looks like and how?
I think Kristen, you can probably talk to that, right? It's just an application. to the state.
It's an application. It has to be negotiated both with the SCTA and the SAA. Just as a point of reference, so as we know that this past year, 22-23 is the first year we've had to do Heidi composite rating scores since 2018-19. There has been no administrator, nor has there been any teacher who has scored a Heidi composite rating score lower than effective. They've all been highly effective or effective. And since being in personnel since 2015, looking at it, we also have had one developing individual through the entire time that I've been going over APPR. So when developing a Heidi composite rating score and negotiating it with the district and both unions, we're very mindful of being careful about our educators who work with students who have special needs and how that plays into it. So, it's difficult for a teacher or an educator to be put in a spot where, you may also have had some state exams over the course of time where they have had an opt-out movement. So we've navigated that as well. But if we were going to look to renegotiate the plan, we'd sit down with the bargaining units and go through that together following the 3012D.
Good. Meredith?
Regarding the APPR, if you have seniors, because last year there was apparently a Regents that was given on the same day as graduation. And if you have seniors that don't need that Regents to graduate and they don't show up, does that negatively affect the teacher?
There are some teachers whose Regents scores, how that outcome affects them specifically. But again, we do go back to a 10-year look back and a cross comparison. So it's not going to become an issue for that individual teacher such that it's going to put them in detriment.
But if a
from
kid,
our experience.
if a kid doesn't need that Regents to graduate and they don't show up for the Regents, is it an automatic 0? And then that 0 is factored in?
Going to get you that information and put it in the Friday packet.
Okay. Future discussion items. Any future discussion items? Sabrina?
I don't have future. It's kind of old business. Last year we had talked about the update of the eSchool, like an app. They said in the spring there was supposed to be an updated app. Has it been updated? Because I tried to go on it and it's still the same.
It's not updated yet. Sue
Okay.
Buckberg goes every month to the meetings that I'm a part of, our CIO meetings, which is like our chief information officer meetings at BOCES, and then she goes to the user groups at eSchool. We're just waiting for the app to be released. And then as soon as it is, actually, we were going to bring it to Curriculum Council so that everybody can see it, give us some feedback, and then send it out after.
Meredith?
It's not future business. It's just that this is a huge weekend for both of our schools. We have lots of kids that are going to be in different plays, so break a leg, and then we have lots of kids that are in different playoffs for sports. We have swimming, we have football. So I just wanted to wish everybody good luck.
Any other future discussion items?
It's future, so I'm not trying to start a discussion here, but I would like us to look at the policy of how we rent out space, how we lease out space. It was part of a discussion last week, but it's clear to at least me that that policy is not being enforced evenly across the board. That we bend or we do things for people that we want to, and then we reject others. So I want us to be clear. It's either going to be a policy or it's not. We're going to either charge or we're not. We have to do things properly. And what, like the PTA, I'm great with not charging them. Are we charging everybody else? Is it an in-house thing versus an out-of-house? So it's got to be a more cleaner, clearer policy.
Is that
Maybe we can get some info.
1500? I have to remember that.
Yeah,
Use of
I don't have the
facilities.
remember.
I don't have the number
off the top of my head.
1500?
but-
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any other future discussion items? Okay. At this time, I need to motion to go into exec session, discuss potential negotiations with one of our bargaining units. Stephanie, second by Matthew. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Good evening, everyone. What? Next meeting is scheduled for November 15th here in the Board of Education room. Everybody have a good evening. Okay.
Yeah.